Welcome to Generation Digital Workforce, the podcast that's here to explore the role of robotic process automation and other digital technologies. Whether you're just getting started or you're looking for advanced strategies and tactics, if you're curious about where human and digital workers are coming together to transform the future of work, then this podcast is for you. All right, let's get into the show.
Welcome, listeners, this week to Generation Digital Workforce. This is Zena coming at you from Austin, Texas. This week, I have joining me Fauzia Khan from Invoke. Hey, Fauzia.
Hi, Zena. How are you?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic as well.
Where are you today?
I am sitting at my home here in LA, in front of the window, enjoying these outdoors.
Awesome. Very good. You want to tell our listeners a little about yourself and what you do at Invoke?
Sure. So we'll love to do that. I am basically a senior vice president of intelligent automation. I know that sounds quite heavy at Invoke, which is a boutique consulting firm. Overall, if you guys want to know me, I'm a business transformation program executive, has been doing strategy and execution for quite some time. It obviously used to be more business strategy and technology strategy, which has morphed into a digital transformation strategy and execution now. I've been doing this about 25 plus years overall, working closely with business and IT. And here I am today with Zena to talk a little bit about that. On a personal level, I am a native of Los Angeles here. I've spent majority of my time with the entertainment studios, working with the corporate team, not fancy creative side, but yeah, I've worked with big studios here like Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers and Paramount Pictures. For last 4 or 5 years, I actually moved out of the entertainment and actually broadened my horizon and became a business consultant working with a variety of industry and clients across the US and globe. I am living in a house with 3 handsome boys. It's a boy family here, and one of them being my better half. So that's a little bit of my personal information, who I am. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. We've had the pleasure of knowing each other for about 2 years, I believe now. Somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds
right. Yeah. You used to be with us here at Blue Prism, but now at Invoke. Tell us what Invoke does.
So Invoke is in the same field of intelligent automation. It's a boutique consulting firm where we actually really work closely with the clients and customers who are in their journey of digital transformation and really helping them more, not only just defining the strategy, because you'll find a lot of that going on in the market. There's tons of talks going on, but we really help them do the execution part of it, more taking a strategical approach and really looking at the big picture, but really making it something that is more realistic and more executable in the sense that we bring in the experience of people like me and my colleagues who are real practitioners. So yeah, that's what we do, basically, trying to make sure that people and companies get the most value out of their digital transformation investment.
Awesome. And you alluded to your experience there and earlier mentioned that you had worked at some of the big movie houses as well. When did you become part of this digital workforce generation that we're living through today?
Yeah, that's interesting. It actually goes back about 6 years back at Sony Pictures while I was working there. It's an interesting story as to how I landed up here. I was part of an internal consulting team at Sony Pictures, basically doing the global transformation initiatives for finance. And while I was there, we were chartered to relook at the overall strategy of the corporate operating model and kind of looking at what can we change and what are some of the innovative ideas to get to a certain goal in 3 years' time. It was quite strategic and top-down approach. And so I was part of that team, and we were just looking at other areas and seeing what can we do. I mean, sourcing has been always a hot topic. Let's cut the operational efficiency, but also, what are some of the business values and what we can do better. And at that time, a consulting firm actually came to me and introduced me the concept of digital worker. And frankly speaking, first when I heard about it, I wasn't too sure how this is going to work. But the whole concept, as I took a closer look, was quite intriguing for me, myself. And so we did a little bit more research into it, and we said, let's try it. I mean, this really sounds quite promising. It definitely is a technology that sounds like, unlike other technology investment that we have done in the past in big ERP systems, which in addition to the cost that's involved, plus the gestation period to actually realize the value, this really seemed like a technology that bridges the gap between what a business is doing versus what the technology can offer. So I was able to take that. We obviously did some, pilots and some POCs and really went through it, did some research. The concept was quite new at that time. But in the bigger picture and where I was at the Sony at that time, I think I was able to convince the leadership team to kind of take a chance at that. So we started our journey at that time. So that was, I think at that time, the concept of digital worker was quite new in itself. I'm talking about six years back or so. And we ended up actually implementing and adding to our strategy this digital worker initiative, where I worked actually for the first time very closely with Blue Prism. It was interesting. So my relationship with Blue Prism 6 years back, basically, as a customer.
Yes, and it was here at Blue Prism that we got to know each other.
Yeah.
And it was about 12 years ago when the literature, the analysts, if you will, started talking about robotic process automation, and the category sort of made its way to the radars of the Gartners and the Forresters of the world. You yourself getting involved 6 years ago, and it was still quite new, as you say, and revolutionary almost, to not to put words in your mouth, but in a way for what you were doing there at Sony. So why aren't more businesses doing this today? What's holding people back? We're still not seeing a majority of businesses yet leveraging a digital workforce. Why do you think that is?
There are a couple of reasons for that. I would say if I just kind of go back, it's almost like when the concept started, there's always when the new concept comes in, people get excited about it. People say, you should expect certain things and levels have big expectations. And as a result of that, because this was especially for the organizations which was going through at that time of, driving operational efficiencies and how can you cut your operational costs, this sounded like a real big deal in the sense that where consulting firms are coming in and saying, this is where you are going to reduce 40 to 60% of your workforce, right? Not really going into deeper as to what exactly does it take to be successful. It is not a silver bullet where you come and deploy a software or a solution and it automatically, you get 60% off. So I think a lot of it, if I go back and look at, has that to contribute to all of this, the little bit of history there, right? So people actually do have a lot more hope and expectation. And there was a time where those promises were not met and people did not see result. Nothing to do with the technology itself, but there were many other reasons, right? Not setting up the real expectations, not making sure that what are the different factors that are responsible for making it successful. So that was one of the reasons why I think people, even after so many years, had a little bad taste in their mouth and were a little iffy as to whether this is the right investment or more of a strategic transformative idea or concept to go with, or is it something that just you've tried it and failed and this is not going anywhere. Obviously, over the years, we have learned from the mistakes. And I think now the market is where people are kind of taking it to more strategic and really truly understanding what it takes to really successfully execute it and get the value out of it. So I think there are pieces of both. And then at the end of the day, I mean, we have to also figure it out that unlike any other transformation technology that we come up with the ERP solution, this one is a little different. People are not too sure. When I say different, I almost mean it's disruptive. And people are not yet sure whether they should take that stake, put that stake in the ground where they go for a big transformation to do this and see the value out of it, or whether this is just like any other new technology that comes in. We tried it, we played around with it, and yeah, it can do some things, but it's really not transformative. So I think there's still little bit of hesitancy, if I may. That probably is why what you see in the market. So there's still, I know that, like you said, 12 years back, there was all this concept, Gartner and McKinsey's and everybody came up with this concept. I think it's almost like a U or a bell-shaped curve where people tried it earlier, were excited, you saw a lot of investment going on in the market, and then soon, not realizing, it kind of took a downturn. And I think people learned from their mistake. And what you can see right now is the curve going up again. So I think that's a good news for us, especially in today's environment with COVID and all the pandemic and the nature of the economy itself. I think it is becoming more and more relevant, and people are really trying to know what are the different parameters outside of technology that needs to work in sync in order to make this successful. So there's still a gap. I think there's still a lot of people looking to really understand how to truly execute this in a manner that they receive the value.
It's interesting. You used a few words that popped out to me in your answer there. Transformation, disruptive. It's not just about the technology. That's of course a few words, not just one. But the people aspect of this change in introducing digital workers alongside human workers, certainly I'm sure has a huge impact on the change management, the organizational design, and the adoption of a digital workforce within a business. You want to talk to us a little bit about the three challenges that the companies, leveraging any technology as it may be new, but especially one that's so transformative and disruptive, to use your words, will explore, the three challenges that they will face as they begin to introduce a digital workforce?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is one of my favorite topics to talk about over the years, and I think everybody has been acknowledging it very well, that frankly speaking, if we go back to the basics that we have been all talking about, any transformation project, whether it is digital worker or any other over the years, whether we were doing outsourcing of the resources, and when the computer for the first time came in, it is the three-pronged approach, right? It's people, process, technology. It really boils down to all of that. And if I step back a little bit just to kind of relate to it, even when we didn't have digital workforce and we had other technology like a ERP solution coming in, people made huge investment in those technology, let alone it took them 2 years or 3 years to implement it and before they can realize the value. It still didn't work and didn't realize the value. And you know what the reason was? Because people were not on board with it and they refused to use it. So you can implement as many technologies as you want, but if there is no adoption from the people or the resources that they don't see the value in it, it's never going to work, period. So what I'm going to tell you is nothing new. I think this is something, the basic of any transformation project. You always have to consider the culture, people part of it. The other part is always the process, making sure that if you're implementing technology to get some business value and really help with your processes and how you do things, and not just for the sake of technology. And I always see technology, the third element or the third leg of it, as an enabler. Technology never dictates the business value or the process. It's always the other way around. If you start just seeing that technology, whether it is any technology, and let's talk specifically about, the digital worker or process automation, as people like to call it in the market today, robotic process automation is definitely an enabler. So unless we balance all the three, it is never going to succeed. So that's just the baseline information. And I know what I'm saying is not anything new. All of us know, but let's dig a little bit more deeper, right? Going back to why this one, when we talk about the concept of digital workforce, is so much more disruptive, because just like you said, just the term itself, we started this terminology calling robotic process automation. And I know some people like it, some don't, and it was a new concept and everything. But if you think about the people of mindset, the tone was that majority of the common resources would think, oh, the robots are coming and they're going to take my job away. And so it has so much more direct impact on their thinking than other technology would have. So even though the concept was great from the executive level, maybe that it's going to reduce the cost and everything else, but down at the bottom level, when you're talking to organization, the first thing I still remember, the amount of change management, organizational change management and communication and meetings and calls with the HR, so that it doesn't become like a union issue, as if the jobs are really going to go away and robots are going to come and take over. So I think it wasn't set up correctly to start with. And I think over the period, people are realizing this is, as long as from the technology perspective, it works like a digital workforce, but it's really to help you, assist you, so that you can do more value-added work and not necessarily coming in and taking your job. So I think that in itself has done, when I say RPA or robotic process, or that word robot actually adds to the whole idea of emphasizing more on organizational change management and taking a more closer look than you would do for other technologies. Am I making sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's so interesting that you say that. And it's interesting that different companies have taken different tactics. So in some businesses that we work with, you see them actually personify the robot, if you will. They give them names. Arnie the bot, who has a certain role, and or they give them names, and then you see other businesses shying away from that and really trying to not personify. Have you seen a particular strategy work best when it's the people part of that three-legged stool that's throwing off adoption of a digital workforce?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think my common theme for any recommendation would be, let's just kind of understand the fact that every organization is different, right? One way of working in one organization culture may not work for others. So you cannot oversee that one rule or one style fits for all. So you really need to understand what the culture of that organization. Are they very forward looking and they're really trying to be lean and they want to make sure and they like the new technology, new concept, and giving name to robot and making it sound? Is it easier for them to adapt and think about this technology and selling this technology? Sure, if the company is ready for it, that works. For the companies that are not ready, where people are really not so technology advanced and they're really dependent on their livelihood for, depending on what type of work it is, and the culture is not there, you need to take a different tone. So I think the overall organizational change management and communication and letting the right tone set really depends on understanding what the organization culture is and how you want to adapt to it. And that's what it comes down to. And I have seen blunders happen in the past where people have not thought about it. Maybe the leadership team was excited about it and everything else, but the tone when you're presenting it to, down below to the rest, it's different. The messaging is different. And that's why I think the organizational change management, I know people tried to push it later in the project, but I would suggest that we definitely take a closer look upfront, make sure the messaging that you have for which sector of the organization and what you need to say. Obviously, when you're talking to a C-suite, they may be interested in something else, but the other group maybe, or the worker bees may be interested in something else. So message it accordingly, what sells. And I think that has worked very well. And I think in general, if you look at it, selling the concept is one thing, but adoption of that technology is much bigger that people need to understand, because you can only sell and get into it at the start of it, but you really cannot make it valuable, usable, adoptable for people to really see the value unless the people adopt it, and you will never see the value of it. So I think that's a little bit of what I would suggest. So there's no one rule that fits all organizations.
What about when it's the process side of the house that's holding back moving forward? I think, Fauzia, you've had this experience in your career as well, where businesses come in, they have a good idea of initially what they want to do and the value it will return back to the business. And they go in and they sort of are able to deliver that value very, very quickly. And then they sort of go, oh, now what? And it almost appears as if it's the lack of a process automation pipeline that really holds them back from scaling. But I'm wondering, what do you think is holding some of these businesses back from scaling? Is it the processes? And how can companies tackle those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I think processes, like I said, going back to those 3 parameters, the process plays an important role. So you definitely need to make sure that you're selecting the right processes that is bringing in the expected business value. I think rather than the volume of processes, the way I look at it is, are you selecting the right processes, even if there are few of them, but it really set the tone. Is there the expected ROI coming out of it? I have seen, and again, depending on which organization you're talking to, where people are saying, let's start with the POC, let's start with a pilot and see how it works. And in order to do so, they really don't have that vision, and they're just trying to pick up some small tasks here and there, which probably you can do it by using a macro or some other tool, and you just want to see what the technology can do, but then not being able to really sell it as automating the end-to-end process rather than task level. And that is where you lose the promises of great ROIs that we usually sell the C-suite. So selecting the right processes is the key for sure. And majority of the time you would see people, when they go ahead and do identifying the processes, and I think it's kind of old school now, where they say, how much time does it take? What's the FTE hours? And they just focus on that. And that is definitely not the right approach. You're looking at this technology as a transformative technology. So you really need to look at end-to-end process, the upstreams and the downstream steps that really look at it in its entirety and not just a part of the process. And look, you don't have to automate the entire process, but you definitely need to understand the inputs and the outputs and the benefit of the overall process. It may involve some human in the loop, which is totally fine. So you will have an interaction between a digital worker and a human worker going back and forth. But it all boils down to selecting the right process that actually can meet and impact your KPIs for certain efficiencies or certain things that you have actually promised your leadership team as part of your function. So if you actually go back and say, what are some of my KPIs, performance KPIs for my department, for my group, or for my processes, the process that you select and the value that digital workers should actually directly impact those KPIs. And that's when you know you're selecting the right process, because it's showing the value directly, and it's really measuring whether it is a quantitative measure or whether it's a qualitative measure, right? Or whether it is kind of going forward, what are some of the opportunities in future to do the tasks that you never were able to do before, and expanding it. So yeah, I think I know there's a lot of talk going on about opportunity pipeline, to answer your question. we definitely want to make sure that, we have enough in the pipeline so that, not every time we end up with one process, we go hunting for others. And I totally agree with it. But it all goes back to what is the tone you set? What is the understanding of the people about what digital worker is all about? So it comes naturally to them, and that opportunity pipeline keeps building, and people come and say, this makes more sense, and let's do it. And that way your pipeline is never exhausted, because there's always continuous improvement going on. There's always things getting to it. But if that pipeline is filled with incorrect process, right, which are not going to drive value, then you're wasting time. That pipeline is no good. So the quality of pipeline really do matter.
It really does matter. And I think something you said there, I want to call attention to, and that is that if you're only looking to cut costs from your business or return FTE hours to the business, you are, I'm going to quote you, missing a trick. It's really when you start to look at the things you couldn't do before because humans aren't capable of doing those things, that you really begin to explore the transformational aspect of a digital workforce.
Right.
And so with that, I'd like to jump in and talk a little bit about the technology. I have the advantage of interviewing a lot of people on my program, a lot of different organizations that are part of this generation digital workforce. And, we've explored topics such as robotic process automation, being, if you will, the arms and the legs, and then you add additional emerging technologies to make it intelligent, right? This idea of an intelligent digital worker. I've talked with other partners who, are sometimes challenged by customers that come to them and say, I need to do RPA, or I need to do AI, or I need to do OCR, without understanding, to your point, the people or the process. They're coming first with a technology leading solution. I'm curious, what challenges do you see companies facing when they move with the technology decision before they understand the people or the process, or they don't appropriately balance the technology need with the other two parameters?
Yeah, I mean, it's written on the wall, right? Big and bright, saying the failure is imminent is what I would like to say. I know it's a strong word, but if you go in without trying to solve a particular business problem, what's going on with just the technology itself, it may solve an immediate problem that you see in front of you, but maybe not worth the investment, but it won't go too far. It's definitely going to, you'll see the break sooner rather than later, and it just falls back flat on you. So I think that is, again, that doesn't go just with the RPA, it actually goes with any technology enablement. And I think if you go back into the history, you would find hundreds of use cases on that, where big investments were made into ERP solutions and other software solutions called for it, but they were not providing the returns that was promised or that was expected, because you can only do the implementation and take it so far. But if people refuse to use it, you can't do much with it, right? The IT can only push so much. And then it goes the whole game of pointing fingers. He said, she said, I did it, you didn't do it, you didn't listen to us. And you really need to get out of that. And when we talk about RPA, it's no different. So we really need to look at, and today's environment, it becomes really challenging, and I'll tell you why. Because when we talk about RPA, or when we talk about the other tools, OCR, machine learning, NLP, today, if you go out in the market, there are so many of them outside in the market. It's really kind of as exciting as it is to talk about it and learn about it. When it actually comes to executing it, I'm confused sometimes. I'm like, yeah, how do you make a right choice of the technology for the needs that you're looking for? That's not only solving today's problem, but also solving tomorrow's. And it is flexible, it is resilient to continue on as you move forward. And that is going to be the critical, and that's the skill set and understanding or partnership that you should be looking for. Because look, every tool can do things that you cannot even imagine. The technology is changing so fast. Every other day, there's a new technology, new concept, new people. Some of them are, I always feel like saying this, some are not even tested. They may have tried it a little bit, but they have never really scaled with it. So they're still in their infancy stage. So that's one of the things that I want to make sure that however, somehow or the other, this whole concept of, because it's not a big technology investment, it's just let's try it. And let's try it and see how it works. And if it works, then, we'll think about it. What happens in those scenarios is that you end up installing or deploying something really quick, and you will see some quick results. But again, soon when you start putting it and scaling it, what you start seeing is that you are actually seeing so many support issues, so many break fixes coming in, a lot of frustration coming in. And you end up spending more time in maintaining those technologies than actually doing new development with it. So it really is the point of failure right there. As soon as you see you're spending, 20%, more than 20% of your time in just maintaining and break fixing, and resolving customers' issues and frustration, you right away know that something didn't work right. The technology may be doing, because I think I've heard technology leaders say very often, it's like, technology is not going to solve the problem. It will only do what you tell it to do. So you should tell what it needs to do. And so if in order to do that, you really need to go back to people and processes again, right? And that's kind of a circle. And that's why I always say that it's all the three parameters, people, process, and technology. They need to work in sync, in equilibrium and balance. And one of the balancing, if it doesn't work, then the other one's kind of makes it fall down. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see. And the other thing is that you just kind of come to it and you say, all right, let me just put some quick desktop installation here and there. But later on, as you're scaling, you're again seeing the same issues. The solution that you have is not robust, it's not reliable, it's not scalable. So I think there are various parameters that people should consider before selecting the right technology, but definitely go back to people and process first before you decide which technology to go for.
Great advice. Great advice. Can you share any customer success stories with us?
Yeah, customer success stories. Let's talk about it a little bit. We had a customer who we've been working with quite some time. And believe it or not, in the consulting world, the way it works, it's kind of interesting because people are either two sides of customer, right? People are either new and trying to help us, like, let's get started on this journey, which are the great candidates because then you can guide them from the get-go. The other customer stories the scenarios that we get is where a customer has started the journey 3-4 years back, tried it, failed again, and they come to us and it's like, can you guys help? So I'll talk to you a little bit about the second part, right? The scaling story. And they would come in and they would say, well, we just need help. We already know what to do. They have already a preset understanding of how to do things, and their pre-understanding of what an RPA or a digital worker is. And majority of the time, they're definitely not starting and have the same understanding, or at least at the same level of understanding that we would like them to be. So our journey started with this client where we actually started helping them with some processes. And they said, here are 3 or 4 processes. Can you help us with the development and, more of just help us and guide us through the best practices of the quality development and all that. And it's kind of interesting because whenever people actually look for more consulting firms, they would look more of a development help, which is kind of puts you back into the technology budget and not so much people and process budget. And once we started working with them and building that trust and when we started talking, we started looking at, the people and the process aspect of that, and soon realized that they had the pipeline, but the pipeline was not filled with the right opportunities. Again, going back to not having the incorrect processes. They were task level, there's only FTE based, and really not looking at end to end. And once we started having conversation from tactical level to more of their leadership team and really having a conversation, trying to understand what are they trying to overall achieve, what's their business objective going to be, for investing in this technology. And soon we found out from business terms that they would like to basically go ahead and do in such a way that their month-end close cycle gets reduced by a day or two. That's what the CFO was looking for from this technology. Nowhere did we find the work that was being done and the tasks that were in the pipeline was directly related to what CFO wanted. So there was a disconnect right there. And so we came in and we actually did talk to them about, let's kind of step back and look at what exactly are some of the different processes or sub-processes that impact why your month-end close cycle is so long. And so we actually did a workshop with them, discovery session, where we sat down with the people in the finance group who are responsible for record to report and really went through the mapping, the value chain mapping of the entire process and really understanding how things are currently done. And we definitely did find that there were things that were repeated many times. They were not organized the way they should be. There were things that could be moved out of cycle and doesn't need to be during that period. And it was definitely the people themselves encouraging them, what could you do differently? And sparking that thought in their mind, oh yeah, I can do this differently. Is there a better way? So really challenging those. And out came of that workshop was really cool because we were able to come back to the CFO saying, here are the people side of things, here are the process side of things, and here's the enabling technology that can make it all happen if we work in sync. So that requires some restructuring in the team itself, how the people do that today, changing what they do versus what they should do or will do if we use digital workforce in the mix. And then we were also looking at the process closely and saying, here are some of the redundancies in the process that can be avoided, doesn't need to be. And then here are the enabling technology, which is your digital workforce, to actually come in and make it happen. And believe me or not, that was really appreciated by everybody, by the people, because those worker bees who were actually doing that thought, oh, this makes so much more sense. It will make our life so much easier. CFO was happy because it was going to meet his goal, objective at the end of the day. And obviously, we were happy that digital workforce could actually contribute to something more meaningful to the organization.
Thank you for sharing that story. I love hearing about customers' positive experiences and the value that they're delivering to their businesses with the digital workers. So appreciate your sharing that story.
Of course.
Any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners before we go today?
I would definitely think every time when you are either starting a digital transformation journey or our digital workforce journey, should I say, or you are in the middle of it and trying to get to the next level, always think about it in combination. And I know when we talk about transformation, it sounds as if it is too complicated, it's too cumbersome. If I have to do all these things that you guys are talking about, do I really need to do such an upfront investment, not just in technology, but now you're still asking me to go think about organizational change management and adapt and do this. Sounds quite cumbersome, and I'm not sure if I'm the right person. I think you can really make it simple and keep it simple. And if you start really looking at it as if, you really need to know the three elements. And if you break it down into people, process, technology, you basically make sure from the people perspective, if I can take that three-pronged approach from people perspective, not only put some effort up front to make sure that you are setting the right tone and having the right people get the right message. I think the other part that I would strongly recommend, which I think I missed the first time, is selecting the right leader execution leader is going to be so critical, because this is, again, disruptive, transformative, as we talked about. There are two, when I talk about people, I actually do break it down into two. One is the people who are leading the change and one that are impacted by the change. So we talked a lot about people who are getting impacted by the change, but we have not paid much attention to the person who's leading the change. And I think that plays a very critical role as well, and we cannot underestimate that. So make sure you select the right candidate with the right impact within the organization, right influence, and really a challenger and knows his or her way across to navigate across the organizational politics and whatever else they need to do that. So that's one. From the process perspective, take an end-to-end approach. Make it part of your continuous improvement culture, right? Measure and align it to your business KPIs. Think what's feasible rather than just automating as is. Make sure that you do that. And then the last part is the technology. Technology is just make sure that you are getting and understanding what the needs are. Make sure that you have the robust technology that's not solving the problem for today, but also to solving the problem for tomorrow. One thing that I would highly say that technology is very critical to make sure that you have the right set of governance model and quality check in place so that you are making sure that you're still meeting your information security and compliance requirement. Those are so critical. But at the same time, I think it's as disruptive for IT and technology leader as it is for the business leaders. And to really understand how the digital workforce work and what's needed, I think be open to be flexible in your way of thinking of technology. I think that will go a long way. So if you actually really have the right execution leader, literally, if I put it on my fingers, somebody who can manage your people part of this, of the change, somebody who can make sure there's a process, right processes are selected in the opportunity pipeline, and the third person who's responsible for the technology part. I think the partnership between these three, they can excel your execution and really take your digital workforce to the next level.
Excellent advice. And with that, we will close today. Thank you very much, listeners, for joining us this week for Generation Digital Workforce. Fauzia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And until next time, listeners, signing off.
You've been listening to Generation Digital Workforce. If you want to hear more about RPA, AI, and other cognitive technologies that are shaping the future of work, join us next time as we continue to go deeper on these topics with industry innovators and experts. To make sure you never miss a future episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. And if you've liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. It's one of the best ways to help more people find valuable content. For show notes and more info, visit us at blueprism.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.